I saw your op-ed, Eric.
Oh, thank you.
Making trouble, huh? That's
That's it.
good.
They call me the troublemaker. That's why I'm
Good
here.
trouble.
So, trying to get the message across. If we're going to do AI, we got to power it, and we got to do it power responsibly.
Right. Meanwhile, they're fighting over who's going to build the next gas plant.
I know. By the way, or if we're waiting for other people, I just got off the other meeting. We're trying to put together an event for the DC Climate Week, which is coming up around Earth Day. Probably going to host a big event on campus here. So there'll be more details coming up, but that would be the idea.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Fernando, I haven't seen you looking that official in a long time. You must be, working the administration role there.
We're tough. We're tough to work for. He's got to. He's got to help keep us in line.
El Presidente, as they say.
That's it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't know if anybody's been watching it, but they just totally reorganized the Department of Energy. They got rid of EERE. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So don't need solar, wind, or storage or anything else. That's building efficiency. Who needs it?
Yeah, I wonder what's is the OE going to be about what? It's going to be about oil and gas or?
That's it. Oil, gas, and nuclear, and AI. Yeah. Well, and critical materials, which includes metallurgical grade coal. Coal is critical material. Sorry, can't help it.
Well, Fernando, it's 1:00.
Yep.
I think we may need to wait another minute for folks to get on, but
Well, we can probably
yeah.
get started with the agenda. So welcome everyone to our November meeting of the Maryland Climate Change Commission's Science and Technology Working Group. I know that you're very familiar with the name already. I don't know if do we do introductions? Is it needed to do introductions? I'm happy to do this quickly. Maybe a good idea while the other participants trickle in, right?
Yeah, and I see some folks joining us right now that we haven't necessarily always had in our group.
Right.
So I think it would be good for
Right. So yeah, so let me start. I'm Fernando Morales Wilhelm. I'm president of UMSI's, vice chancellor for sustainability of the University System of Maryland, and also have the pleasure of serving as chair of this group. And I've been a member of this group for a long time, so it's great to be here. So let me pass it on to Eric and then Dawn, so we can go through my window here.
All right. Well, I guess if that's the order of your window, I'm Eric Walksman. I'm the director of the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute here at the campus, University of Maryland. And also just FYI, I've got to step out in half an hour because I got a board meeting for something else. So I will join when I can.
Don Bosch, Professor Emeritus at UMSI's and former chair of this working group.
Great. So let me have Dave and then Rahat.
Yeah, Dave Namazi, the chief of staff at UMSI's, and I help with this group and with the MCCC.
My name is Rahat Sharif. I am a state science policy fellow with UMSI's and Maryland Sea Grant, and I'm here to help you guys out.
Thank you. Victoria and then Russ.
Hi, I'm Victoria Coles. I'm a professor at Horn Point, UMSI's, and I am a large-scale modeler.
Good afternoon. I'm Russ Dickerson, Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Science, the University of Maryland College Park. make measurements of greenhouse gases and air pollutants, and am a commissioner on the Maryland Climate Change Commission, serving as the scientific liaison.
Wonderful. Paulinus and then Robin.
Good afternoon, Paulinus Chibu. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, where I also serve as director of the Living Marine Resources Center.
I'm Robin Gilden, University of Maryland School of Nursing, Community and Public Health, and director of the Environmental Health Certificate. And I'm also a commissioner representing public health.
Great. Let's do Adele and then Jared.
Adel Shir Mohammadi, professor in the Environmental Science and Technology Department at the University of Maryland, College Park. I am a biological agriculture engineer in water resource environmental engineering, climate impacts, and BMP evaluations, Chesapeake-based stuff for a few years. Thank you.
Hi there, Jared Williams. I am with the Maryland Department of the Environment, and I sit on the climate change team where I provide administrative support to the Maryland Commission on Climate Change and its working groups.
Wonderful. Scott and then Lynn.
Hi, everybody. Scott Kanaki here. I'm the director of the Morgan State University Pearl Laboratory. I'm an environmental economist by training. For what it's worth, too, I'm also leading a number of searches to bring on faculty to Morgan that are a part of a new state-funded center called the Center for Urban and Coastal Climate Science Research. Yep.
Great. Yeah,
Thanks.
exciting to see who shows up for those searches. Yeah, so wonderful. Yeah, Lynn and then Eric.
I am a retired RN, informal educator. Chime in now and then with the group. Thank you.
Wonderful. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Davidson. I was just checking to see if there's two Erics here.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes,
Maybe
you're
I
right.
shouldn't have jumped in so quickly. Sorry.
Spelled the same way.
I'm was emeritus professor at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, at the Appalachian Laboratory, and biogeochemist. I've worked on carbon and nitrogen and various kinds of nutrient cycling in soils and the impacts of land use change and climate change on those fluxes.
Wonderful. Jonah is just joining us. So Jonah, right in time to introduce yourself.
Hi, sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. Apologies, Jonah Rollbacher. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins University. I also have a startup in Baltimore called Etch, and my area is in just energy technology generally.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, great, folks. Thanks for all for being here on the afternoon of the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, I should say. But so excited that we're doing this today. One of our the recommendations that we put forth in the recently approved annual report for the Maryland Climate Change Commission was doing an update on the so-called comprehensive assessment of climate change impacts in Maryland. And today, we're going to have a presentation of how that could go about. And I'll preface this by saying that a new element that's been incorporated in the annual reports for MCCC is a follow-up on recommendations made the year prior. So in the 2025 report, we will include an update in the 2025 report, we'll include an update of our recommendations that we made in 2024, right? And then in a year from now, when we issue our report in 2026, we're going to be requested to provide an update, simple update. It's a 1 sentence, 2 sentence update on what has been done in follow-up recommendations. So this is the first step that we're taking in addressing one of our 4 recommendations. So I'm very pleased that my colleagues, Victoria Coles and Don Bosch, are joining us today with some thoughts on how this can take place. So the floor is yours, Victoria and Don.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Fernando. Just to reiterate that this is one of our recommendations, which was approved and included in the annual report of the Maryland Climate Change Commission for updating the comprehensive assessment of climate change impacts we did way back at the start of the commission in 2008. I led that effort as the chair of the STWG. Victoria, who you'll hear from a little bit later, played a key role in helping us bring in some downscale climate projections for and trends for Maryland. And so she's still with us as well. So you'll hear from her in a bit. So this is what's included in the annual report, the recommendation that with the agency responsibilities being MDE and DNR, in partnership with our universities, will uptake this comprehensive update, the 2008 assessment, and then including things like the most recent IPCC reports, the National Climate Assessment, other relevant scientific findings. Now, in this recommendation, and it's basically what we recommended to it, it's noted that we should take into account several other reports and activities, and they're listed here. And if you haven't already figured it out, you have the PDF, and those have URLs. I mean, those have hyperlinks associated with it. You can go right to the website and see those reports. The point I want to make here is that when we were developing this, there was kind of a confluence of several ideas, and one of them is just the climate impacts assessment. And then there was a lot of other discussion and interest about human health effects, not only in terms of how changing climate affects health, but also how energy supply, the present energy supply and in the future would affect health and well-being into the future. So it became known internally within our group as the joint study. And so we'll keep this in mind as we get back later on in talking about how do we scope this study, because this we have to make a decision on about where the boundaries of what we want to address here. In addition to that, there's several other reports which we take state reports which to take into account. After we did this assessment in 2008, Adaptation and Response Working Group developed two different plans, adaptation plans, basically, that took into account these findings and based their planning for adaptation based upon our projections and so on. The most important, the one that you should pay most attention to, the most comprehensive one, was done in 2011. So like 3 years after this. But it's still, now that's a long time ago now. So we need to be thinking forward. So this is an interesting history, and bear with me as I kind of walk you through it, because I think the timing and what was done and how it was done was really important. As you all know, there have been IPCC assessments. We are now completed the sixth assessment. We all know AR6, and then we're in the process of planning. Members are being appointed, plans are being developed for the seventh assessment, which is not really scheduled to be fully done until 2000 and I can't see that, 2009, I think it is. So that's kind of far out into the future. And the point here is that we're probably going to have to rely for the IPCC projections pretty much on the sixth assessment. Now, there are several things that happened in 1990 as well. One, in addition to IPCC, in this country, George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, was elected and began service in 1989. And if you're old enough and remember this, he actually came out and was asked how he was going to address climate change. And he said, well, there's this greenhouse effect, and we're going to bring to bear the White House effect. And he's sort of famous for saying that. And he was talked out of it by John Sununu a little bit later. But in those days, there was a lot of attention, ramping up of research and paying attention to climate change. So in 1991, Congress passed the Global Climate Change Research Act of 1990. So that also passed the same year as IPCC was released. And that called for ramping up of research on climate change, but it also called for a national climate impacts assessment. Now, the Bush administration then forgot about it, and actually going forward, even the Clinton administration forgot about it, so that toward the end of the Clinton's term, two terms, they began to act and say, well, we have this requirement. We're supposed to do this assessment every 4 years. We haven't done it yet. So there was an effort done, and it started in about early 1999, ended in November of 2011, year 2000, 25 years ago this month, to produce the first national climate assessment, the one on the left. That actually was sent by the president to Congress on November 11th, 2000, and the year 2000. So some of us who would participate in it had this long email thread this month talking about that experience and what has happened and since and so on. And the interesting thing about it is that it kind of lost its attention when it was released, because it was released on the very day that the Supreme Court ruled on Bush v. Gore and closed that presidential election. So we then had 2 terms of George W. Bush. So you notice this big gap. They didn't take this up during the George W. Bush term, the assessment. So when Obama came in, and in 2009, there was an effort to say, let's get this going again, recognizing the long delay since the last assessment, and the fact that 2 more IPC assessments had done. That administration put together the second report, Global Climate Change Impacts in the United States, 2009. I was also one of the authors of that report, and that was done in a hurry. And actually, it was done, as you can see, about a year after we completed our Maryland Climate Change Impacts Assessment. And I'm holding these 2 new reports up because you can see they're about the same length. The national one's a little bit longer, but the U.S. assessment that was done in a hurry took a lot of the approach that we took here in Maryland. The graphics and layout and that sort of thing. So we had an impact on that. Maryland was at the time a leader. The only other state that had done a comprehensive assessment of climate change impacts was California at the time. So we were well ahead of the game and had some effects. But all of these years, we've not done another one, and since 2008. There have been other national climate assessments, 2014. At that point, they began to be really taken over and driven a lot by agency scientists, some academic scientists and other scientists involved, but the agency scientists took the lead. The 2018 report was actually well in progress when President Trump took office in his first term, kind of flew under the radar until it came to the point where the agencies had to sign off on that report. And so the NOAA of all agencies refused to sign it and demanded and tried to change some of the conclusions related to whether reducing emissions would actually reduce the effects of climate change. One of my long friends and colleagues from my Louisiana days, Virginia Burkett, just got a Nature magazine award for standing up for science because she was chair of the Global Change Research Program who refused to change the report. And so it was released on Black Friday of 2018, so they wouldn't get much press attention, but it actually ended up getting a lot. And then, of course, the process continued, and in 2023, we have this new fifth National Climate Assessment. I went through there to kind of give you a history and the fact that we've been standing still and a lot of things have been going on, both internationally and nationally in terms of assessing climate impacts. Now, if we look at the 2000, this is our report, the one we did in 2008. And it's helpful to kind of review why we did this, because in 2007, Governor Martin O'Malley took office. And in his first session, there was efforts to pass legislation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for Maryland. It was ahead of its time and didn't pass. So at the very end of that session in April, he basically issued an executive order based to establish the Maryland Climate Change Commissions as well before it was put in the statute. And it charged it to develop this plan of action to address the drivers and prepare for likely consequences. It assigned this group, STWG, with the responsibility of producing the comprehensive assessment that we're now trying to update. We actually had it peer reviewed and published, actually, less than a year from we started in late summer of 2007 and finished in July. So, it can be done quickly. It depends on how deeply you want to go in terms of how much time it will take. Several of the people still around, we did this, by the way, that the STWG was put together especially for the purpose of developing this report. And so it was chaired by myself, and it had co-chairs, the deputy secretaries of MDE, Bob Summers, and the deputy secretary of DNR, Frank Dawson, were the co-chairs. And then we built this group of largely academic scientists who helped us write the report. So there were 22 of them. And not all of them contributed to it, but most of them did. So today we still have on this screen Victoria Coles, Russ Dickerson among those who contributed to it. But there are about 8 scientists who are still active, still in jobs rather than retired like us, who are on that group, are still in Maryland. And this shows you the approach and the content, the chapters of that report. Importantly, is happen to think of the time at which we did this. It hadn't been done before. We had fairly limited assessments, both internationally and nationally. The fourth assessment IPC assessment had just been done, so we had that insight and projections, and that we really had 2 purposes. One is to basically being part of the overall plan to communicate to Marylanders why we needed to take action on climate change. So it was really intended to do this in a sort of a public-facing way, make it readable and public-friendly, to basically convince the legislature, the General Assembly, and the public that it was time to take action. And secondly, this was to set the stage for the kinds of changes that we should anticipate if we were going to develop an adaptation strategies. So it had those 2 purposes at that particular time. Now we've got, we're well underway, things are moving forward. You have to think of a different, set of purposes for this new update as we go forward. So this fifth, the National Climate Assessment. So one of the points we can take off from is this 5th National Climate Assessment. It was done in finished in 2023. And it is huge. If you can download one PDF of the whole report. First of all, one of the things the Trump administration did when they took office, I should say that, is they basically disbanded the Global Change Research Program office. They basically, the development of the 6th assessment, they put a halt to, told everyone to go home. And so it's not going to be another assessment under this administration. So it'll be a long time before there'll be another one. So the reports were taken off the website. You couldn't access them through a federal site. That's been changed now, but I obviously included a link to that report, and you can look at it yourself. The PDF of the whole thing, appendices and all, is 1,834 pages. So we're not going to do that. That's just too much. And it has, 32 chapters, deals with a lot of detail. The numbers behind each chapter, the number of pages of each of those chapters. And it has It includes with discussing, in addition to the impacts, adaptation and mitigation as well. So we have to think about, it can inform what we do, but doesn't need, we don't need to do exactly this. By the way, there were surprisingly few, but some Marylanders who were associated with this, other than people who might happen to be in Maryland, but in federal agencies associated with this, the fifth assessment, including Paulinus, who is with us today, was one of the authors of one of the chapters, and there's several others we could maybe call on as we think through how to do this, because they have some experience in that regard. So where are we going from here? First of all, I said that the seventh IPCC assessment is now underway. And of course, you know, a main part of those assessments is developing models, projections about future climate. And on the right of the screen you're looking at, it shows you the scenarios, the emission scenarios that were used in the sixth assessment. And I've put in there codes, CMAP 6, because what happens in these assessments is that all of these models are run, and they're now, back when we started, you know, back in the first national climate assessment, there were just two models we were dealing with, one UK and one Canadian. We didn't have an American model in it. Now we've got 20 plus models that go into a massive database that can be explored. So when they run the models, the output of the models is archived. So when we talk about downscaling and so on based on the IPCC models, it means, and you'll hear Victoria talk about this some more, basically going into those massive archives and exploring the data to make those projections. It had these 5 scenarios, and so if we look, and you're familiar that these are the SSP scenarios. The fifth assessment used the RCP scenarios, so they're always changing. They will change this time, because the World Climate Research Program has endorsed another set of scenarios to be used in the seventh assessment. It's unlikely that we'll have those in time that'd be useful to us, because they're still in the development and working out all the little details and modules and so on of them. But they are going to be different from the SSP scenarios. First of all, the dreaded 8.5 scenario is essentially gone. The very high scenario, because it's just not likely to happen, because we couldn't burn enough stuff that quickly to make it happen, even if we had it. And so there'll be another scenarios, and they'll be labeled the H high, medium, low, low, very low with a high overshoot, and one with a low overshoot of the 1.5 climate goal. So the point is here, I just want to show you where the future IPCC assessment is going, but the likelihood that we really have to deal with these CMIP 6 scenarios in those data archives. By the way, the IPCC is met this month and had a dispute about the timing and schedule of this, with some of the developing nations wanted this done more quickly, and some of the other nations, notably Russia and some others, wanted to track it out for a long term. It is yet another sad result of America's withdrawal from this process, because the US government is not involved. Fortunately, AGU and some other organizations nominated American scientists, so there will be Americans on the IPCC writing teams. But it's unfortunately our country isn't involved in these negotiations about how to make this work. So the other thing I said, we were trailblazers in 2008. Only California was in that sort of league. There was, however, a Union of Concerned Scientists led effort to do a climate assessment in the Northeast of the US, which was just before one we did, which was very helpful to structuring ours. Now we are left behind. California has done 4 assessments. They're working on their 5th. Our neighboring states have all done more recent assessments. Delaware had one in 2014, New Jersey 2020, North Carolina 2020, and most recently, New York State has an assessment up and produced. You can get it online through those hyperlinks in 2024. Pennsylvania, the same thing. And then as you've seen some of the email exchanges this morning, Virginia has just completed climate assessment. Now, said that, the Virginia one is a little different than the others because it really wasn't done by the state government. It was done by George Mason University under the College of Science. And I know this guy who used to be the dean of the college there, who might know a little bit about this, can help us. In other words, our chair, Fernando. And that's just been done by those folks. So we have a lot of examples that we can look at and build on and take what we like, best practices in terms of how it's laid out, how it's presented, the scope, and that sort of thing. The other thing I want to point out here, since we have these outlines here, these chapters on it, is that all of these, almost all of the ones I talked about thus far, state and the national assessments, deal with climate change and impacts. They don't deal with the consequences of energy production, other than in terms of how it's changing the climate, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on, such as air quality issues, human health effects, other than, again, affected by a changing climate, or things like with respect to new types of energy, such as solar parks, solar farms, in terms of the issues related to land use and solar, or wind power and the effects on whales and birds and things of that sort, that we have to then think about how far into that do we want to tread. So all that's back and to lay the background for what we should be thinking about talking now. One, in terms of the scope, is this joint study concept. To what degree do we assess the impacts of energy and generation, both fossil fuel energy and renewable energy, and versus the impacts of climate changes on human health, environment, and economy. The issues of how deeply do you get into mitigation and adaptation? So what degree do we, in this report, do we address Maryland's emissions as opposed to global emissions and how it affects our global climate, and Maryland's adaptation planning? Or do we hand off this to those efforts as part of the Climate Change Commission? I would strongly recommend that very sooner than later that there is a steering committee established that would include representations of the appropriate other working groups on the commission, particularly Adaptation and Response Working Group, because they are the real client that we have to serve, I think, importantly. ECO, with respect to public involvement, communications, those sorts of things. And then there may be other stakeholders that we want to include on the steering committee, in addition to STWG members or other climate science experts. Secondly, is that how do you design it? Do we review? My suggestion, a strong suggestion, is that we review other state assessments as well as the 5th National Climate Assessment, and kind of mine those for understanding what works and what's the best organization of this. Not be wedded to how we did it back in 2008. I think we have to then, from that, determine the major topics in the chapters. And then, I think we need to decide early on, rather than late in the game, about, is this going to be largely synthetic? Can we just take information from the National Climate Assessment and other sources, and rather than being more analytic to take more detailed downscale model projections, how much more information that we have in terms of climate trends and so on for our own state, Maryland. We need to kind of find out what's the sweet spot in that range of activity. And then the question of how, in a range of how public friendly you want this document to be, or whether you want it to be highly technical. I mean, if you've read any of the IPCC, if you read those chapters, the average member of the public would fall asleep quickly and not really understand a lot of what's going on. So we have to kind of think that. And then finally, in terms of execution, I got to tell you, all of these examples, the strong leadership is absolutely critical. And then you need committed authors who understand it and are going to make this a priority to produce it. You need, again, looking at the state of the art, the practice. I mean, we were ahead of our times. We had good graphics. We had a graphic artist design it, but I mean, the state of the art is really advanced now. So there's, powerful graphics in all of these reports. There needs to be appropriate funding, and we need to determine a timeline. I would strongly recommend, we did it in the first one we did in the 2008, but there'll be a peer review process to give it credibility. I myself served as a review editor for a segment of New Jersey's efforts recently. And it was kind of an interesting experience, so that the review editor basically did their own review, but coalesced all the other reviews and told them what they really had to fix. And you had to satisfy the review editor. So there are things like that I think we should think about sooner or later. And then dissemination. These reports have gone from the time when we were handing around paper reports to now web presentations. In fact, if you saw that graphic when I showed you all of the national climate assessments, the most recent one is kind of, is wider than it is tall. And that's because it's designed to be read on a computer screen rather than in a paper document. So all of those things I think should be dealt with, and maybe other issues in terms of setting forth on this path to develop the report. So with that background, let me turn it over to Victoria, who's going to talk about 4 other issues that she wanted to raise relative to our thinking about how we approach this. So Victoria, do you have slides to share, or can I get out of this, or what?
No, go ahead and keep it up there. Okay. I had some slides to share, but I thought it was more important that we leave the space for discussion. So I just wanted to mention a few things that came up in so first off, it's great to see you again, Russ. We don't look any older, right? But a few things that came up at the time and that I think we've forgotten in some senses, that we recognize that this was something that would need updating. And it seems to me that as we move forward, that should be a key element of our thinking, as John noted, right? The 6th assessment, in a way, that's great that those model runs and all that data is available, and the models are fairly well characterized because the reports are all written, so we understand the ups and downs. But the fast-tracked simulations for the 7th assessment will be coming out, and the report will be old or in not too long. So planning in advance for maybe a more a strategic vision of developing analysis pipelines that can be maintained into the future could be an important thing to think about. I think Don laid out these other state agency reports, and I just had noted to him this 2024 National Academies report on best practices for these assessments that really focuses on, let's pay attention, not just to what the scientists want to present, but to what the stakeholders need, and to how we can use our understanding of networks to disseminate information and make sure that what we're providing is relevant to the groups that need it. We have a lot more existing data at downscaled stage, like the Cordex data, for example, and that'll be coming out newly, but we also have it for the past so that we can get a little bit closer into Maryland specifically. Don showed that national assessment, and we've done climate studies looking at the difference between the northern part of Chesapeake Bay and the southern part of Chesapeake Bay. They're not, at relatively small spatial scales, we see pretty significant climate impact differences. So we need to resolve those things. We also have new technologies. So we now have the ability, there are a lot of new opportunities to attribute climate impacts and actually quantify not just uncertainty, but quantify the costs associated specifically with how climate change is affecting our responses to events and the probability that those events will happen. And so that attribution has been quite powerful in communicating the real cost of climate change based on some of the work, for example, that the UCS has done. And I think it would be a powerful approach for us. And we also can bring AI to bear. There are some really nice technologies for looking at event attribution associated with AI. And so we have a lot of expertise across the state of Maryland in these areas that could inform a new report. We also have quantitative uncertainty available to us because we have ensembles of model runs that we didn't have before. And then the last thing that I just quickly wanted to mention is that we have UMCES has been working on a new initiative, the Chesapeake Global Collaboratory, and as part of that, we actually have have gotten some support to hire some data scientists and AI experts. And so we have a little bit of resources potentially that we could help to contribute to such an effort from that effort. And also I tend to think about the HPC and the data side. That's just my excitement, but we also have the ability with a new building coming online to bring together those stakeholders and really think about what are the key needs? What should we be focusing on? Not just what are we excited about? So I'll turn it back to Don. Those were my main thoughts on this.
Great, thanks very much, very helpful. So Fernando, I put this slide back up and I'm going to turn it back over to you to lead the discussion. I think I'm happy to answer any questions for clarity, but then hopefully we can discuss how do we move forward.
Yeah, so let's no, thanks both Don and Victoria for kind of leading this part of the discussion. Certainly the perspective, the historical perspective is super useful in the sense of, we did this in 2008. It's many moons ago. Lots of the science itself has changed. Also, a lot of the human side of the issues have changed in that time. Many other states, the whole country has come on board with multiple of these assessments. So not too difficult to make the case that it's high time for us to do one of these updates. And in addition to that, bringing all the new tools, new science. One thing for context is that when we put forth this recommendation before the commission, the concern that came out is, yes, we think this is a great idea, but who's going to do it, right? And of course, who's going to do it also translates into, who's going to pay it. And in an effort to smooth, that part of the conversation, I assured the secretary that we would do our best, and by we, I meant the collective of Maryland universities would do our best to find the resources, chip in, and so certainly the resources that Victoria has mentioned as examples from the collaboratory, it's one example. But that also leads me to think that the state is probably not willing to do this at this time or fund this at this time, or that they would need, deeper persuasion, such as something like this is presented, which makes the case very clearly. So with that kind of context set, I'm happy to hear any comments, discussions, perhaps some of the individuals. Well, I think it's just Russ that participating in the previous assessment has something to add, or open the conversation in general, the discussion.
I'd be happy to make a few quick comments. Thanks, that was a great summary. And I agree with maybe Victoria said, we have to think about who our audience is. I mean, the immediate audience is the Maryland Department of the Environment, but this is a tool for them to show other people like the Department of Natural Resources, and especially the House of Delegates, people who are actually in a position to do something about this. So that's, bear in mind that we should have lots of nice graphics. We can include lots of rigor in the science, but there has to be an executive summary and some flashy pictures that our elected officials can use. One of the biggest differences is now we have a lot better information on downscaled models, so we'll know a little bit better what will happen to the weather and the climate over Maryland. And something that wasn't much included in the first analysis was, what are the benefits? It's going to cost Maryland money to implement greenhouse gas emissions reductions. But those costs are not without substantial benefits. And so we should include a section on what do we get for moving away from coal toward renewable energy. And that most of those benefits are going to be in the health department. So we'll need to work together on that. Do we have, are we going to invite a representative from DNR in this? That occurs to me. They have a vested interest. They might want a voice in what we include in the report.
Okay.
When this was discussed, Fernando, at the MCC, one of the problems we have is that this was done so long ago that no one in any government officials knew about this, or really. In fact, I remember that someone said, "What is this thing, global warming in the Free State?" And I guess I was showing my age, because when we did it, we wanted to have use one of the nicknames for Maryland, and Old Line State didn't make sense, so we used Free State, which was was first used in 1864 when Maryland freed its slaves. But they didn't know about this, and they didn't know how it was done. And and the way we did it then, I mean, we had the two senior representatives, deputy secretaries, who both had scientific backgrounds in MDE and DNR, right there with us, aside the whole time, to make sure that they were being relevant to their issues, and then also that we thought about handoff on how this would use. And if you think about it now, the ARWG's got a whole bunch of agency representatives. It's hard to imagine, almost think of an agency of state government that isn't affected by climate change, transportation and health and, you name it. Planning and the like. So I think we need to think about how we involve them to understand what we're trying to do, and to help us give us some guidance about what would be helpful. The other thing was Russ was talking about, the idea came to me. Now that we've let everyone else move ahead and do this, it might be useful that to kind of contact some of these other states and ask them about what are their most useful, who's using this, what are your audience, what's been the response, who's got used the report, to get some idea from that. Now that we have a whole number of replicates all over the eastern seaboard of states that have done this.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Dave, and then Robin.
Just quickly to this point about agencies. I mean, I do think that, certainly DNR, planning, MDA would probably actively want to be active participants. How they're active participants may be up to them, whether it's through the steering committee or some other means. So I think we want to be inclusive of the major of those major agencies, because they're also going to hopefully use it the most and significantly moving forward. So they're one of our, I think for this report, not only is the MCCC and MDE an important client, but so are the other agencies.
Right. Thank you, Dave. Robin?
And just to follow up on that, I really feel strongly that we are missing the health piece, and to follow up on what Russ had said, that the benefits are going to be in the health arena. So that's why I'm strongly suggesting that somebody from the health department be
Yeah, so
included in the, and also, yes, the main audience will be the legislature, but we also need to consider that this is going to be directed and need to be functional and useful for the communities. And so we need to have it action oriented and usable, understandable by the general public.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. So Adele, and then back to Dave.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I put on the chat, but I wanted to actually add a few more items to that. We did a comprehensive, really climate impacts on agriculture and looked at historical as well as used the CMIP6 model suites to predict climate factors into future. And then based on those climate factors, we determined evapotranspiration, water withdrawals, and many other things. So using AI forecasting and so forth. So I think that report could be used, portions of those, because it is also supported. The funds came through state legislators. So that can be something. Yesterday, one other thing that I want to mention, yesterday, Maryland Maryland Water Monitoring Council had their annual conference, and we had a session, a 1-hour session was given to Interagency Water Consortium that Matro from MDE and myself, we basically formed this Interagency Water Consortium in 2019. And we have been meeting, we had symposium and stuff, and quarterly we still meet. So basically we organized, each agency yesterday had a presentation in that 1-hour slot. Hans Schmidt, for example, from MDA, and he had slides in there how the agriculture regarding irrigation and basically stress on our aquifer systems, fresh water. These are things that we have already, in other words, information, report is written. And the only thing is that the release of the report, we have been going back and forth. I think state legislators wants to be comfortable with all the things, and it will be released by mid-December, and it will be put on Hughes Center for Agroecology's website. I sent a report PDF to my friend Fernando just for his information last week. But I don't want that to be distributed yet because they have told us not to be distributed, because Fernando sent us those comments that we had, and what have we done in response. So I wanted him to know that we have some things that we could write into those responses, but we'll wait until the state legislators allow mid-December to release this report. But that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, just to comment, you're right, Adele. We have now a lot of other things we can draw on. This new report on agriculture vulnerability, but also some health assessments, climate and health. We'd already done the sea level rise projections, so it's not like we were starting from, a blank piece of paper like we were, back in 2008. So we should definitely build on those and use those in the assessment.
Yeah, one other thing maybe I should have, Don reminded me. Don was one of the people also at the proposal stage. I relied on him, and he, we had his advice. Eric Davidson was part of the team as well, so our colleagues. So 2 of us from this group were involved in that effort. So just wanted you all to know. Thank you.
So
wonderful.
So Robin, I don't know if your ears were burning earlier this week, but ARWG has begun initial planning with Cliff Mitchell, MDE. I'm serving as a liaison between the STWG and the ARWG on redoing, in perhaps a more modest manner, the state health assessment associated with climate change. And to the degree that the timing is appropriate for both of these efforts, I think is something that we'll all need to like understand. And I think the reason why your ears are burning is because you're likely going to be on, not only an active participant
Yeah.
perhaps, but also a steering committee associated with that.
Alrighty. Yeah, I was wondering, because I thought that was also one of our recommendations.
It is. So we decided that it's best to join forces in this.
Absolutely.
So
Smarter, not harder.
that's right. So I apologize that I didn't get a chance to brief you on that beforehand or make a mention of it earlier. But I am on the agenda for 5 minutes for it. But that is basically the briefing I was going to do, so we could save 5 minutes from that. It's still in the early stages, but it is moving forward.
Happy to help.
Great. Yeah, just one additional comment is that we also had one of our 2025 recommendations was related to the item of health as well. So this would also allow us to make progress on that recommendation. So that's very good. So let me suggest the following. Thanks again, Victoria and Don and others that have participated in this discussion to move forward. I'm thinking if I'm sitting on the other side of the table in a request like this, I would want to know, give me a proposal or give me something, right? So which includes resources required let me propose that we have a conversation, and maybe it doesn't have to be the entire group, but I'll tag some of you, and if anyone wants to be part of this discussion, please let me know, so we can structure a little bit of a kind of business proposition, right? Where we not only post this as something that's going to cost MDE or someone, something, right? But also, what is the what is the offset that this could generate that would make that investment worthwhile, right? And I think this is a great collaboratory project, as we want to promote the use of the collaboratory. So I appreciate, and I had also prepared to put some of UMSI's own resources on the table to help to chip in for something like this. And I'm happy to go around with a hat and knock on many doors to help get some resources. But let's try to have an idea of what's the least that we would need to do something like this. So does that sound like a good next step? Great. So I'll take on that action item to start that conversation and get.
Brando, I think you should make sure we also include in that list private foundations,
yes,
private funders.
Yes, indeed. That's already on my radar, correct.
And can I just remind everybody that this also, it listed all Maryland universities, not just a few.
Yes. Although and I've made that point clear. It's with the recommendation reads with Maryland universities. So
correct.
Yep.
Yeah, we had quite a few universities represented in the team that put this together initially, including Hopkins, private universities as well as public, Towson, any number of places. So.
And UMB is the health university.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Well, wonderful. Yeah. So now we have an action item for that. So is it okay we move to the next item on the agenda, to Jared and updates from the commission?
Hi there. So updates from the commission. The commission has met for its final time this year and approved its annual report, which is really great news. I think this was one of the most effective years and efficient years we've had, which I'm really happy about. That has been put into formatting or it's put into a document for ECO to format. They're working on it right now, and we'll have that distributed to the commission and also to the governor and the General Assembly before December 15th. So stay tuned, and great work.
Wonderful. Good to hear. Good, and looking forward to seeing the report in its final form. And thanks for the update. So Dave, back to you. I think you had said that you had preempted your comment, but is there anything you want to add or reiterate?
No, I mean, I think I really want to thank Rylan Taylor, who helps coordinate the ARWG group, but she reached out and asked for an initial meeting with Cliff Mitchell and MDE, represented by the other Chris. I'm sorry, there are two Chris's, and I always forget their last names and which one is which. The tall, thin one, Jared, if you could help me with his name.
No, they're both tall and thin. There's Chris Hoagland and Chris Beck.
So Chris Beck
Hoagland is the director for
right.
the
No,
air
yeah. So it's Chris.
Administration.
It's Chris Beck. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're forgetting about Beck, yeah.
And so we've had a couple quick meetings, and we're gonna the next task, I think, is that Cliff is gonna draft a one-page kind of what might this look like. And Cliff Mitchell is with the Department of Health, who works on climate issues. And Robin, if it's okay with you, it all depends on how much time you want to devote into the early planning stages, and I could get you as involved as early as possible if you'd rather that. Yes, okay. I didn't want to put that on your plate without talking to you first, so that's great. I'll ask that you kind of join this small group that we have early on, and I'm sure Cliff and Rylan would really appreciate that. So
I know Cliff very well.
I imagine you do. I imagine you do, and I think that the other part they had been thinking about is like a when and where to have an initial kind of put everyone under the tent type meeting, as well as having focused drafting and scoping work. And so it's still in the very, very early stages of that, but I'll get you involved through an email, hopefully later today. Great. Thank you. That's it for me, Fernando, on that.
So Fernando, it's getting your call, but I mean, the slides I put together and Vic helped me with, they're your property now. I mean, and if there's some parts of them that could be useful in dealing with the, I mean, I was just thinking, I suspect that most of our colleagues in these agencies don't know about what the nature of what's going on in other states in the region. Right. That could be very compelling to them, help them understand the value of it. And so please feel free to communicate with his leadership about what we're doing.
Yeah, and the pitch would go something like this, right? We would give them the background, using this material you've developed, and the fact that all these states and all these national assessments have taken place, so to make the case that this is not just something that we pulled out of the air, that we should do it again because we did it in 2008, is because there's actually a good solid.
Yeah.
I like the word business case or business reason, because that catches the eyes of people and say, okay, so this is serious. This is not just some scientists that want to do another scientific study, right?
Right. The other thing I think is compelling is that at least probably for 4 years or so, if not longer, we're not going to have another national climate assessment.
Right. Yeah, no, and I'll ask a stupid question just as I was hearing to your presentation. I think I know what the answer is, but I want to hear it. So when O'Malley charged this study the first time, there was no indication that this should be repeated, that this should be updated. Was there any language that we could hang to that said, hey, listen, it was in language and we haven't done it?
No. As I said, there's national legislation that says there should be a national climate assessment every 4 years. But we were just starting out, and I go look back at that executive order, and it was a forward-looking order. And what he was really trying to do is lay the groundwork for bringing back legislation in another year or two that put a plan before the General Assembly. And so, these reports, not only our report, but the first climate action plan were produced in 2008. By 2009, the General Assembly session, they passed the first Greenhouse Reduction Act. So that was the goal, to lay the groundwork for taking action. I think if you have to study that, it's remarkably successful in it was quickly responsive. It accomplished the result within 2 years, major legislation within 2 years.
Great. Well, so let's start the process of putting this together in a format that we could pitch it for funding in several places. So I really appreciate you guys taking the energy and the initiative to kind of articulate it. So this is great. So let's move forward to the next item in the agenda, which I just want to give you an update of appointments of new members to the STWG. We've had some transitions out, some retirements, etc., right? And also trying to, for me at least, trying to get a handle on who is actually on the STWG, because our mailing list was, like an exponentially growing a mailing list. So we've received some suggestions from this group as well as others, and I listed those in the agenda. And what I wanted to do next is, I mean, I've had some contact with some of these individuals and sounded them, but I don't think, for example, that I've sounded Victoria, who was here, who is here still. So in terms of joining the STWG, but I will be doing so more formally with a letter and a follow-up conversation. And Victoria, in your case, you might know the dynamics of the group, and this conversation might be easier. Some people have never been involved, so they require a little bit of more hand-holding. So I'm going to approach these individuals, and I'll give you an update as they agree or don't agree, or whatever response we get. So I'll be doing that over the next few weeks. Any questions or suggestions or?
Yes, I had recommended, I believe, before Dr. Karen Russ, RN JD. She's also at the School of Nursing.
Okay. So
and I've already talked to her about it, and
Okay,
she
good.
knows definitely what's going on, and she's very excited about being approached.
Okay, good. So sorry if we missed her name. We'll update that list and contact her as well.
I'm just putting her confirmation or her contact information in the chat. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Fernando, another part that just crossed my mind when you're talking about these is that I'm sure there are quite a number of experienced climate, or people have very good deep knowledge about climate issues who have recently parted with federal employment and happen to be Maryland residents. And that's a really good, interesting resource, because some of them have been through this process, these assessments and forced marches and so on before. I don't know. I don't have a name off the top of my head, but there are a number of people, I'm sure.
That's a great thought. So, and we can mine a group of individuals for suggestions, but you're right. I mean, NOAA, NASA individuals, EPA, USDA, and the list keeps going. So, absolutely, let's definitely explore that. It's a great suggestion. Adele?
Yeah, Fernando, two things. Number one, when we are inviting the people that you have the names or names will come in, are you going to sort of at least give them a little bit what their responsibilities would be in terms of, so what they're looking for? And second item I want to bring up regarding non-university sort of people, we have Eric Davidson knows him well too. Michelle Cavagili, who has worked a lot with ARS, he's retired, phase retired, I guess. And I saw him on, let's see, this past Wednesday, in fact. So we had good chat. He has done lots of work they have done on sort of residue carbon sequestration work, crop yield, and climate impacts, and so on, and with their lab, and Stephen Mahersky works with them too. So Michelle Cavagili, he may be a good a good one from somebody who has just stepped down from ARS, but is phased retirement. He's pretty good in, he has been around on carbon sequestration stuff.
Yeah, so let me suggest if you have the name or the contact info, as much information you can, so we can contact and thanks Robin for forwarding this information. So the plan would be, yes, absolutely. We put together a little bit of a scope of work, or whatever the scope is for members of this working group, and we can pull that together from the information is already at the MCCC, plus some additional bullet items that I can add, because I've been part of this committee for a long time, and I can make the pitch, give them some time to respond, and then formally get them appointed. That's a little bit of the process that I was thinking of following. So if you can get me that contact info or the name, we can certainly chase them down. So so hopefully we'll have a more varied, diverse, new faces. So some of us don't have to be the new person anymore, right? Okay. Well, thanks all for that feedback. So we can move to the public comment portion of the meeting, which is our last agenda item. Is there any public comment, any intervention? Okay. Thanks Adele for forwarding the information. This is great. All right. Well, folks, thanks a lot. And we have one more scheduled meeting in December, right? Given that it's scheduled like for December 20 something or 19th or something, I think it is. We're going to still keep it on the books if we decide to that we don't need it, because we can communicate by email and maybe continue progressing without a meeting. We'll do that, because I'm very mindful of how those dates are travel prone. So if we don't see each other again, it's been my pleasure, privilege to chair this group in 2025, and look forward to working with you in 2026. Dave, you have another comment?
I do, thanks. I guess I just noticed, at least in my own calendar, I don't have the third Friday of the month in for these meetings at 1 o'clock, and I was just going to suggest that we continue. I think this time has worked well, and if we could continue doing that, and we'll get everyone's calendar, we'll send out a calendar invite to that effect.
So for 2026.
For 2026, throughout all of 2026.
Right.
Yeah. It's in the books for December 19th, but I didn't see it in January and February. So we'll go ahead and send out that calendar invite.
Works for me.
Yep. And we probably won't we're learning in Zoom, if you put the links in too early and then something changes in Zoom and then you end up with a dead link, which then causes all these complications. So we'll probably do it without the Zoom link and then try to incorporate those a couple weeks before each meeting. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thanks everyone. Have a fantastic weekend break, as well as next week, whatever plans you have.
Thank you.
Thank
Safe
you.
travels.
Thanks. Yeah.
Have a good
Yeah,
holiday.
Robin, maybe you and I should chat about models.
Okay.
Maybe you're not the right one, but that's worth doing.
Offline or
Oh,
later?
yeah, no, not now. Yeah, offline. Sorry. And I have to tease Fernando. Have you seen what the governor of Indiana has suggested?
I have not.
Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. It'll ruin your
I'm gonna
week.
look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, it might ruin your weekend.
Okay.
I'll warn you.
I'll look it up. I've become resilient for these things.
You're gonna need it.
All right.
we had a good laugh at the
Nice.
research council meeting on
Nice.
campus yesterday about that action.
All right. All right,
All
man.
right, thanks
Have a
for
great
running
weekend,
this.
okay? Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.